National Innovation Strategy. The nation station Oman FM, with the cooperation of the Research Council, presents Innovation Roadmap, an introduction to National Innovation Strategy from the Research Council.
Hello and welcome to Innovation Roadmap. I'm Lakshmi Kothaneth with Ahmed Arimi. Today, our guest is indeed very special because we are talking about intellectual property pillar of National Innovation Strategy. And thinking about intellectual property pillar, he is going to tell us more about, I'm sure, somewhere along this half an hour, even the genetic resources when it comes to plants and animals would come under this category of discussion. Dr. Ali bin Hussein Allawati is an expert in plant genetic resources and from Oman Animal and Plant Genetic Resources Center at the Research Council. He's also the member of the intellectual property pillar of the National Innovation Strategy. Thank you, sir, for being with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. Thank you.
Thank you. So your experience is immense, and I'm sure you have dealt with intellectual property rights throughout your career.
This is true because, as you mentioned, we are working in the Oman Animal and Plant Genetic Resources Center. When we say resources, these are resources. However, how to utilize resources, of course, through research and innovation. So at the end, your genetic resources, either plants, animal, microorganisms, you need, and there is some commercial potential, then you need what they call it, a tool for protecting it from use by others. So this is why we have intellectual property rights for different sectors of technology, copyright, and intellectual property rights on plants, new plants. So these are different categories which were published by law since 2008, 2009. And most of the laws were on intellectual properties were really published, and there is some other few in a way.
Beautiful. So one thing that we must look into is what is the status of intellectual property rights in Oman currently? Like you said, it was established in 2008.
Yeah. From the legal perspective or legislations, this was like 2008, 2009. So you, what they call it, you pay for a tool that protect you. Mm-hmm. If you have any intellectual products, like a new variety of plants or a new electrical circuit or a software or application, and you want to protect it from use by others, especially when you are protecting it from for commercialization. So an inventor or a developer spend years or times and money and resources to produce a particular product. That product, of course, need to be retained for him or her as a researcher or his organization. And how to protect it? IP laws, intellectual properties laws will protect it.
I think in the world history, it was never looked upon as important as it is today when it comes to genetic materials. Would you agree?
True, because most of the intellectual properties laws and legislations were started by European and North American. And it was basically for mechanical and electrical stuff and some designs. However, for plants, microorganisms were recently. So for the plants, the new varieties of plants, either plants for agriculture, food, ornamental, other use like medicinal, it was really the momentum started almost 50 years ago, like in 1950, this year. It was started by European and United States for protecting a new plant variety. And our law on plant variety were, in fact, issued in 2009, and it's by law or the orders published in 2013. So this is the process, and we are really starting to receive what they call it a registration for new plant varieties, for as an example of intellectual properties.
Yeah.
Since 2 years we started as a committee.
Okay.
Yeah, with different stakeholders.
How does it go?
Really, for example, me as a member in that committee, for the plant varieties, it is headed by Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries. We started, for example, received the first four for wheat, and then there is another wheat.
The original wheat of Oman.
Yeah, no, this is a kind of developed wheat.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It has Omani genetics as well as wheat that adapted in the country. So the breeder or the developer, they mix these genes in a breeding scheme. So they developed 4 varieties, and they want to test it. Is it a new variety or not a new
How
variety?
do they do that? They have like a panel?
Yeah, we do have a panel. We have what they call it inspector. And the inspector will check according a criteria that wheat varieties, are they different from parental, like mother and father? Because these wheats are, in fact, you need to have 2 what they call it
traits.
2 parents like us. To develop a new variety.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have a criteria to test it in the field, and is it really different from parent or not?
Okay.
And then if it's stable, has really characteristics that is unique, then it's really eligible to be a new variety.
And so is it eligible? And
it is now under test.
Okay.
Yeah, under test, and I think the initial result of it will be by July 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, and there is another one on pomegranate, and there is another one on Omani thyme.
Really?
Yeah. So these are really starting, and when, in fact, from the plant variety and from intellectual properties rights, when this is one of the indicator when the country has application for a new plant varieties, this is a good indicator that this is the innovative issues is going on. Yes.
So this is innovation.
This is innovation, yes.
And this is how intellectual property is actually would help.
Exactly.
In the long run.
I give you an example of the plants, but of course this is apply for application in computer or designs, fashions, technical or engine or electrical circuit, all these or any other products that could be really to be eligible as innovative and new product that need to be protected.
And the best part is now it can be registered in Oman, under Oman's name.
Yes.
Before we were going to other countries.
Yes, of course, when you protected any developed product, you protected here in Oman, or you can protect it in a country that could use it as a commercial. For example, many innovative things were protected in the United States because it may have protection from commercialization, as well as Oman also linked to different international IPs, which one of them is called World Intellectual Property Organization. This also helped, WIPO. Through this organization, you can also protect your IPs in different countries through a particular system. Also, there is a one on plant variety protection called Union of New Plant Variety Protection, which is under the WIPO umbrella.
Okay,
Yeah.
So this is definitely fascinating. We'll take a short break and come back. You're listening to Innovation Roadmap.
The main objectives of the intellectual property pillar of the National Innovation Strategy are building qualified individual and institutional capacities in intellectual property, increasing the number of entrepreneurship institutions that produce value-added goods and services, empowering legal institutions, effective development of intellectual property policy in the Sultanate, and creating economic return from research and development through knowledge transfer. You are listening to the National Innovation Strategy.
Innovation Roadmap, and once again our guest is Dr. Ali bin Hussein Allawati. He is an expert in plant genetic resources from Oman Animal and Plant Genetic Resources Center at the Research Council and member of the Intellectual Property Pillar of the National Innovation Strategy, which is facilitated and supervised by the Research Council. Dr. Ali, we were looking at, what is the trend that is seen, especially now, from manufacturing to genetic resources. It's a growing trend. Now, what is the difference the intellectual property rights pillar in the National Innovation Strategy going to make?
It will give you what they call it the way how to go ahead. So that strategy will let you know what are the deficiencies that we have nationwide, how we can fill these deficiencies, either for technical perspective or for training or from academic perspective or from what they call it manufacturer perspective, as well as from awareness perspective. Our talk is kind of awareness, like now to the public about the importance of the intellectual properties and how to go ahead with it. So it's really giving you the roadmap how to go ahead with the intellectual properties.
And there are great opportunities, especially for research, would you say?
Yes, of course, for the research. I mean, output of research that has a potential for commercialization. This kind of intellectual properties and its laws will help in protecting what the scientist or researcher achieved. Some product as well might be does not need kind of research output, for example, design or fashion or writing a poem or authority or publishing a book. Such things is different manner, but it's still under the umbrella of intellectual property.
Now, people might ask, why would genetic resources be so important to have intellectual property rights, and how would one attain income? But you're actually saying that out of 1,400 species of plants, for example, almost 300 of these species could be used for landscaping and ornamental as well as in horticulture field. And that would be to domesticate them.
Yeah. Of course, if you want to develop a business based on ornamental and landscaping, and you want to rely on your plant genetic resources. So these are plant species that occur in the country in a wild form, from the north to the south. But when you have it in a wild manner or fashion, you need to have add some research that you make this wild species, like a flower, stable in its characteristics, will not change by years, and it has a really a unique feature. This will let the inspector for a new plant variety will give it, this is a new variety based on comparison to other varieties of the same species. And when you go any shops here in Oman or in the world, you can see these packets of seeds, of flowers, of different types. And this is, of course, based on seed company. So the seed company used such kind of improvement of wild plants to be marketed. But when they want to market it, they protected as intellectual properties by overcoming by others to use it
into the market.
Yes.
So that is one thing, but especially with genetics, would you say it would be the government who would hold the intellectual property?
The government will help to issue the license that this is a new product, either plants, a new variety or whatever products, and it is licensed for protection like 20-25 years. It depends.
So it is actually looking up for innovators.
Yeah. And so, from the legal perspective, is really in fact, most of it is under the management of Ministry of Commerce and Industry. They do have the Department of Intellectual Properties because logos and these are also under the IP activities.
Yes. And that's at the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. What what are the challenges you foresee?
The challenges are, for example, the awareness, that we are really raising the awareness, and students in the universities and other academic organization, they are now, what they call it, getting aware about the importance of protecting your developed products. And of course, we also would like to share this with the general communities, the importance of the intellectual properties. So the awareness, I think now we are with the mission that started or initiated by the Research Council. We are spreading the word, the importance of intellectual property. And the other thing is how to convert the research findings, especially the research finding, to something it has a market. That's really challenging.
It's a very important point.
It is a very important point, and
so it's not just in a file, but we're actually making income out of it.
Exactly, and that's really take sometimes more efforts, more intellectual thinking, how to develop what you achieved to a product that's really acceptable by the market, because acceptance of the market to the product is very important. Your research achievement is fine, but then to convert this to something marketable, it's really more challenging, in fact, to find the research results.
So what about the researchers in Oman, according to you? Are they in this category, or are we just recording quickly?
In fact, might be when you are talking about 25 years ago, yes, they were only recording the research, outcome of the research, but then how to develop it, the trend is just might be started since 5 years ago. And I think a lot of research projects is really going to be under the IP because it has commercial value.
We will now take a short break and be right back.
National Innovation Strategy Project, sharing the vision and sharing the responsibility. More than 70 Omani experts and specialists representing various governmental, private, academic and civil institutions have been actively involved in the development of a National Innovation Strategy Project, which was approved by the Cabinet in 2016. You are listening to the National Innovation Strategy.
Listening to Innovation Roadmap, and it's a very exciting discussion about how research is actually now reaching a point in Oman where it is looking at the next step, and that is to implement or advance the findings of the research. At this point, who should come into the scene? Because a lot of time maybe the researcher doesn't have the kind of capital to go to the next step.
This is a very important question. In fact, we are looking for bringing all the chain, from the research till a product, under one, what they call it, platform. So the researcher can talk to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer can talk to the researchers. So the researcher can show us what potential products that may have a commercial value, and the manufacturer who are interested in developing this to a product that really help the market, the economy at the end of the country. So this kind of platform, the TRC, is really working for it, and they started with the sector of energy, on bringing scientists, academy with the energy producers. There is challenges either facing the manufacturing or the sector, like energy sector, to the scientists, and it is developed, and it's called IJAD, and this is one of the umbrella.
It comes under the intellectual property pillar?
Yes, it will. Yeah, it helped the intellectual property to what I call it, to get product that could be protected by intellectual properties.
And how many researchers have come under this?
I am not sure, but I think a lot. I think there are at least 31 organizations, academic and industry, under
Who've registered
in this umbrella.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that is very happening place right now.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's launched end of November, December, last year.
Okay. And where would you say we are right now? This is one example, but the latest indicators and progress achieved under the pillar, if you were to reflect, what would you say? The indicators and progress achieved under the intellectual property pillar.
The strategy published last year, and we started with indicators dealing with the public awareness. So, number of activities to the public, to the academic institutions and other governmental institutions is started to tell them about the intellectual properties, and so we are telling them what are the deficiencies, how to get improved the situation of intellectual properties in the country. And so we are opening a dialogue with the community and with the researchers, with the public in general, about the importance of the intellectual properties and how to go ahead and how it will help the economy of the country. So this is one of the indicators that we started from the end of the last year. And there is other indicators, of course, were mentioned in the strategy. For example, number of offices that transfer the research output to industrial products or project for markets. And that's, of course, still at the beginning, especially when you are talking about the academic institutions. They need to grasp the idea and to get some kind of infrastructure like human resources who's dealing with the IP is innovative. Only Sultan Qaboos University, in my knowledge, they do have such kind of office that they how to convert research output to innovative or intellectual properties products, and they